But again, they're also still...
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and they're also still in the development of that overall operating system for autonomous vehicles. They want to be the Microsoft Windows to your car.
That would be a good business to be in.
Yeah, so it just depends. All right, so we're live now on Facebook and YouTube. I'm Renee Filipponi. We're joining you from the Detroit Auto Show. This is day 2. It's still the media preview day. And I'm joined by Mark Phelan. He is with the Detroit Free Press. He is also the president of the North American Car, Utility, and Truck of the Year Awards. So you were on the big stage there yesterday when they handed out those awards. And maybe we'll start there because I tweeted out the winners. And I got some interesting feedback online. We'll start with the Honda Accord. Now, this vehicle has been around since 1976. Clearly, there was a remake for it to be up for this.
Yes.
I had some people online calling it boring. So what you guys chose this. What is it about the Accord that made it such a great car for this year?
Well, and it's a very good point because a lot of people look at Car of the Year awards and they think, oh, it should be a sports car, it should be a Ferrari, a Corvette, something. But actually, what the jury is made up of 60 jurors who write for all types of media, automotive specialists from across the United States and Canada. And one of the strengths of the jury is that we've got people who have a lot of different types of audiences. So we've got business writers, we've got performance enthusiasts. We've got people who write for the general public, and that helps to push our awards toward sort of the all-around athlete, the vehicle that's good at a lot of things. And the Accord is a great family sedan, even at a time when most buyers are moving toward SUVs in preference to family sedans. It shows that you can still build a really good car, and it is it's a fantastic value, very good fuel economy, a lot of room inside for it, and Honda has become a leader in adding a lot of advanced safety systems like automatic braking to cars that are affordable for people, and that is a meaningful improvement. So while it is not a sports sedan, it's a really, really good sedan, and we thought that overall it was the best vehicle in its class.
And not boring.
Not boring.
All right, we'll have one more question about the Car and Truck of the Year, and then we'll move on to questions we're already getting from the audience. And you actually wrote an article in the Detroit Free Press this morning because people were puzzled perhaps about the decision to name the Lincoln Navigator Truck of the Year, because many would consider it an SUV. So why was it Truck of the Year?
It is a perfectly understandable question. And for the first 23 years of the award's existence, they gave out 2 awards, Car of the Year and Truck of the Year. Last year, we added Utility Vehicle because utility vehicles are becoming such a hugely important part of the market, and we're still feeling out the definitions, frankly. One of the challenges is that there are not that many new vehicles that are, strictly speaking, trucks introduced every year. Right. A pickup or a commercial van, and we don't want it to be an award that is just given occasionally, so we thought we'll look at it in terms of the capability of the vehicle. And whereas a Honda CR-V is a utility vehicle that people will not use for any of the traditional truck-like jobs like towing or doing off-road, the Lincoln Navigator, the fact that it can tow more than 4 tons of trailer is one of the main reasons people buy it. So we thought, thinking of truck as a capability,
it has the function
segment
of what you might use a truck for. Okay, we're going to go to our first question from Carrie Hirsch, and she asks, how are the Chrysler vehicles this year? Anything new from Chrysler that's on the floor?
Yes, actually, Chrysler has got quite a bit that's new. The biggest news for them is a new Ram 1500 pickup, their light-duty pickup, completely new from stem to stern. It will be in dealers shortly. One of the most interesting things is that Chrysler, almost without anybody noticing, they have taken a few pieces of key hybrid vehicle technology and put them in all of their pickups. The engines use an advanced sort of starter that makes it easy for the engine to shut off and restart to save fuel. So technology that you might not expect in a pickup, and it's got the big, bold Ram looks. So
I've seen it. It's pretty. It's a big
it's
truck.
In your face.
Yeah,
yes.
It definitely is.
And also Jeep from Fiat Chrysler. Right. A couple of very important new vehicles. The new Wrangler, which is going on sale now, and they just today showed an updated version of the Cherokee, which gets a lot of new changes, including some of that same engine technology, and the sort of 3-tiered headlights that were sort of controversial go away in favor of a more traditional look and grille.
Now, a question from one of our our viewers right now, Adam Taylor, interesting question. You did bring up electric, and people wonder, where's Tesla here? They're not here. Are they allowed here, or is that a decision from them?
Tesla is absolutely allowed here. They have exhibited here at times. They're not here this year. One of the things that a lot of companies try to figure out, because it's expensive to mount, a
there's a lot of glitz
exhibition.
and glamour down there.
Yeah, yes, yeah. The real estate and then making the most of it to get attention, very expensive. They don't have anything that's brand new that they're selling yet, because they've got the new Model 3, but it's just sort of trickling out of their factory. So it didn't make sense for them in terms of return on investment to be here, but I expect they will be here in the future, and they are on everybody's mind here because they've changed the way the auto industry thinks.
Absolutely, it's definitely a talker, and they're still trying to fill all the orders that they have at this point. They have more of a production issue that they're trying to deal with. We're going to go to Alec Moore, and I think I know the answer to this. He's probably seeing these lovely cars behind us here. We have a Ferrari also in this room, and you can't see it. We have a Rolls Royce. There's that Bugatti outside. He wants to know, can the public view these cars at the show too? Do you know?
Most of them, yes.
Okay.
Right now we're in a sort of an ante-room to the press room where the media is working, but most of these very high-end vehicles will be at the show, either on the main show floor or some of them out in the entrance area to Cobo Center. But a lot of them will be here, yes.
Yeah, they're pretty spectacular, some of these. Things that most of us will never ever be able to afford, but still nonetheless. And just a reminder here, my guest is Mark Phelan. He's with the Detroit Free Press. We got lots of questions coming in here from YouTube and Facebook, so we'll go to Michael and Jackson Sheedy. What has been the greatest design surprise for you this year?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Just in general, the return of the concept car. Vehicles that aren't something that's going to be sold.
There's some neat ones out there.
There really are,
yeah.
And for the last few years, we haven't seen a lot of really far-out concepts that show what a company's thinking for the future is. And this year there are two from the Nissan group, a Nissan crossover SUV called the Cross Motion, that is probably directionally what they're going to do with the next generation of the Rogue. And at their Infinity Luxury stand, there's a gorgeous four-door, not quite a sedan, but a four-door car called the Q Inspiration.
Okay.
And both of those...
Oh, I've seen a lot of buzz about this one.
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit about it? Because I haven't got a chance to take a look at it yet.
Well, it is low and wide and sleek, and Infinity's sedans have struggled to really establish a clear identity, and this is the direction they're going, for perhaps the next generation, and it would definitely make them stand out. So that's part of the reason people are fascinated by it.
A question from Kevin Carlson. He wants to know the reaction to the new Ford Ranger. So far we've only got the press, so it's not really a representative group. I think the public reaction to it is going to be great interest. The Ranger... How is it different?
Entirely new. Ford stopped building the Ranger for a few years when they were in resource conservation mode during the Great Recession. So it's been absent from the market for about 6 years. They're bringing in an all-new version. It's bigger than the previous truck. It's a mid-sized truck. It's based on one that they sell in a number of other parts of the world. So that's the question, because it is...
Where's the market for a vehicle like that?
Well, nobody thought there was one until 2 years ago when General Motors introduced the Chevy Colorado and the GMC Canyon, and they sold better than anybody expected, and Ford looked at it, and after some years where they said, no, we're just going to be the F-150 company in terms of pickups, they decided to get back into the midsize. So the Ranger is their play with that. It looks very interesting. There's no way it will not sell well initially, because the Ranger is a strong name that has a few million people who love it.
A lot of recognition.
I don't know if the interior features have got the level of comfort that people will expect in a pickup in the long run, so it may struggle a bit on that front.
We'll talk a little bit, because you did get a question about market share, and this is an interesting one because there are quite a few trucks out there. What do we know right now when it comes to what's actually selling? Cars, trucks, SUVs? Because there are a lot of trucks, big focus. There's a whole row where it's truck after truck after truck after truck.
Yes. Well, and in fact, 3 of the most significant vehicles introduced here are trucks also, the Ram 1500, the Ranger, and the new Chevy Silverado. So yeah, the market is definitely heading in the direction of trucks. Pickup trucks, their market share will probably be stable, maybe go up 1/10 of a point or so, but they're not in huge growth mode. SUVs is where the growth is. I mean, last year the way the industry counts this is they combine trucks and pickups and SUVs into one category. Last year they were 63% of the whole market. It used to be trucks and cars were split, almost even.
Where's the popularity in that?
People love the higher seating position that they get in a Honda CR-V, a Ford Escape, vehicles like that, because that's where the real growth is, at the smaller end, and also in luxury vehicles like the Audi Q5. So they love the higher seating position. They like the all-wheel drive. They think that the vehicles give them a lot more storage space, although in a lot of cases the cargo section of a small SUV is no better than the cargo section of a small car would be. But it's very popular, and as there are more of them on the road, it gets less and less pleasant to be the one person who's in a little low sedan and surrounded by, it's like you're sitting at the bottom of a well sometimes.
We have a question from YouTube about the Mustang. Any Mustangs out there? And there was a bit of a splash about the Mustang a couple of days ago.
There was indeed, yes.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. For anyone who isn't following, the Mustang was a bit of a headline here on Sunday.
Absolutely. It was one of the great presentations of the show. First of all, the Mustang in general is getting a lot of upgrades for the 2018 model year, but Ford announced that they would do a new special edition called the Bullet, which has their V8 and a bit more power than their regular V8, in honor of the 50th anniversary of the movie Bullet, that great Steve McQueen movie.
And that car was here.
And that car was here. The car that Steve McQueen actually drove in the movie was thought to be lost for decades. Nobody knew where it was. It was one of the holy grails of collector cars, basically. And it turns out that a fella in New Jersey had bought it in 1972 from a classified ad in the back of a magazine, and his son had had it parked for the last 20 years. The son wanted to see about getting it back out on the road. He spoke to Ford Motor Company. It's here, and the really sort of crowning achievement of the introduction was they introduced both the new Bullet and that car with Molly McQueen, Steve McQueen's granddaughter, who has just loaded with stage presence and who learned how to drive a manual transmission car so she could drive in the chase scene in a commercial that Ford shot.
That's awesome. Again, more questions coming in. This one comes from Dave Jacobs. He says, I want a compact 4x4 pickup with stick. What are my choices out there?
Well, compact pickups are hard to find at all, so just about everything has moved on to the mid-size segment now. But 4x4 with a stick, certainly you can get that in the Toyota Tacoma, the Nissan Frontier, and I believe that there is a manual transmission available in the Chevy Colorado as well, but I couldn't swear to that.
And that goes well to Gilles' question. He says, anything new for the Toyota Tacoma?
No, it was all new 2 years ago, I think, and they're just adding features here and there, but no major changes this year.
All right, we'll move on to Lewis asking, is there a mid-engine Corvette?
Not yet.
Is that something they're talking about?
Well, like the original Bullet Mustang was the holy grail, the mid-engine Corvette is the holy grail to another group of people. General Motors has not officially confirmed they're building that. We all are convinced that they are. The idea is to take the Corvette to an even higher level of performance. We're not sure, frankly, if it will replace the current Corvette or if it will be an addition. It's not here yet. The best thinking at the moment, I think, is that we're about a year away from seeing it.
So maybe next year.
Yes.
That will be the splashy announcement, perhaps.
If it's not, all of the talk for 2 weeks before the show among the press was, will the mid-engine Corvette be here this year? It wasn't, so we're going to be even more obsessed with the same question next year.
And we'll get back to the questions here from the people watching, but I have one myself, and I'd be interested. The Chinese automaker GAC is here again. This is what their second year here?
Second in a row, and they've been here occasionally before.
Now the story with them is, they're not currently selling in the American market, but they want to. They have a pretty big stage presence down there. What do we know about this company?
Well, they're very successful in China, which is the first thing to know. So they have resources, and a lot of Chinese automakers want to sell vehicles in the United States and all throughout North America. They are widely expected to be the first one, and perhaps within the next 2 years, to have a vehicle on sale here. Because we haven't had a chance to drive any of their vehicles, even for the most part sit in them. It's terribly difficult to form a judgment yet. Their design certainly has come a long way. 10 years ago, they were here with a vehicle that looked like it could have been put together by your nephew in his basement. Now the vehicles are clearly professionally engineered and designed. It's whether they can get the rest of the package right is the question. And
their staging is just as flashy as anyone else down
Absolutely.
There right now. They had big names on their stage with their unveil yesterday. So now, last year the car of the year went to the Chevy Bolt, the all-electric car. I felt like last year there was a lot of talk about electric. Is that still as big of a conversation this year, or what do you think?
It's wider spread, but not as prominent, I think. What we're seeing is electric car and hybrid technology being used in virtually every new vehicle. So we don't have any new electric cars being introduced here this year, but we're seeing technology that was developed for hybrids and electric cars showing up in almost every new vehicle that's here. Like as I was saying earlier, the Ram pickups. Mm-hmm. When you see them when you see a big pickup borrowing technology from a little hybrid, I think that means that the battle is over. That technology has won. It's just a matter of how fast can they implement it.
And even the Accord, Honda is saying that they're looking at an electric Accord for next year, or a hybrid
plug-in
Accord?
hybrid
a plug-in
version,
hybrid, yeah.
As I recall.
So when you have a popular car that's been around for that long, that it itself is going that way, it kind of gives you a sense of, it's less of a novelty now perhaps than it was a couple of years ago talking electric.
Absolutely, and Honda as well. They sold the first hybrid in North America with the Insight, a little hatchback, almost 20 years ago, and they have revived that name this year with a very nice looking hybrid compact sedan that'll be on sale, I think, in the second half of the year.
All right, we got a question from Daniel Marcotte. He says, starting to see reports that electric vehicles can be overall more cost effective than internal combustion, at least in the USA. What can you say about that? And I'm not sure you can answer this, but he asks about similar comparative reports for the Canadian market when it comes to overall cost effectiveness of these electrics.
I think there's an awful lot of things in favor of electric vehicles in terms of cost. The upfront cost will still be higher because of the economics of battery production, basically. Mm-hmm. But there are fewer parts to wear out. There's much less service required because there are fewer things that need to be lubricated and replaced frequently. And in most places, I think, and I suspect that the Canadian markets for electricity and market for electricity is similar to the U.S. The market rate that you pay for recharging generally makes it considerably more cost effective than gasoline.
I guess it depends on what it costs to
yes.
charge it, right? Here's a question, and I have no idea the answer to this one, from Greg. He says, have you seen the 2008 Trans Am Bandit edition signed by Burt Reynolds?
I have not.
Is that here?
I honestly don't know. I remember hearing about that car, but I am not. But I'm afraid I'm not sure of its whereabouts. I have not seen it here for sure.
Now we've been talking cars and models and makes and all those sorts of things, but another topic that has come up a number of times in myself covering this as a Canadian down here is NAFTA. How big of a conversation is that for the automakers here and those folks in the Detroit press who cover the auto industry, particularly the North American auto industry, and sort of what's at stake, because everything's sort of in limbo at this point?
Absolutely. It's a huge issue, first and foremost, and especially for the traditional Detroit three, Ford, Fiat, Chrysler now, and General Motors, because they have the most integrated assembly and production systems among the three countries. They all would be very, very hesitant to see NAFTA ripped up, as there have been suggestions. I think everybody agrees that it's a 25-year-old, perhaps now old treaty, and there are probably things that need to be tweaked. But the industry is very much in favor of keeping the free trade aspects of it, and it seems to be on a lower level of intensity with the administration these days, but it is not easy to tell what this administration is thinking at all times.
Yeah, it was interesting. We heard from the Ford CEO about that, and he said what you were saying is that there are issues with NAFTA, and maybe it is time it's reworking, but the stakes are high because we do know there's Canadian politicians down here in meetings with corporations and anyone who needs to understand what that relationship means. Everyone wants to make sure that everyone understands what the playing field is. So
absolutely.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
Well, and really, I mean, the American and Canadian auto industries are integrated so completely that it would be impossible to, it's like separating Siamese twins.
All right, let's get back to the actual cars on the floor here. Matthew James Keeping asks, GM unveiled the 2019 Silverado. Will they unveil the 2019 Sierra?
Not here. It will be shown. The Sierra is the GMC version of the Chevy Silverado. They are traditionally very, very similar. We are told that there will be more visual differentiation between the Silverado and Sierra this time. The new Sierra will be shown in the reasonably near future, but we're not sure when.
All right. There we go. Okay, so I was a question from Mike McPhail. He's saying, I was specifically wondering if there was any news from Toyota about the Supra, if Toyota has unveiled anything at all there yet as well.
They have not. That's another one of the unicorns that those of us who follow the industry have been hoping for a sighting of. Toyota is expected to do a new version of a sports car like the Supra was in the past. They've been working with BMW to develop the underpinnings of a car like that. It's not here, and I don't know if there's really any smart guess as to when it's coming.
Did Toyota unveil anything this year?
They have a new version of the Avalon, their large sedan, which is, it looks like $1 million, but as we were saying earlier, so much of the momentum in the market has shifted to SUVs that it hasn't gotten much attention.
Interesting. Okay. We have a Carrie Hirsch, who asked a question earlier, has another one. She asked about Chrysler earlier. Now she wants to know about GM, commercial vehicles such as the Savannah.
That's a van.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything from them with the van?
Boy, honestly, it's easy to forget them because those vans have not been updated much in a long time. GM's commercial vehicle strategy is a bit of a mystery. I mean, Fiat Chrysler works with the Ram builds their pickups, and they work with Fiat so they've got European style delivery vans. Ford has begun bringing European style delivery vans like the Transit Connect over. General Motors, they've never really made commercial vehicles a key part of their strategy. They haven't invested much in Europe. They buy them from other companies. I don't think that there's any clarity as to what's going on with the Savannah, and the Express, I think, is the name of the Chevy version of it, but no immediate changes.
All right, we have a question specifically about anything from Tom Penny, anything from Germany that stands out in there.
A number of interesting things.
Volkswagen has something this time.
Volkswagen's got the Jetta sedan, which is all new. Volkswagen, bless their hearts.
They're working to rebuild their reputation. I know that for sure after the emissions scandal. So.
Very much so. And they've always been terribly frustrated because in Europe, they are seen as a mass market brand, but just a little bit above the rest of the mass market brand. So people will pay an extra 3 or 4% for a car with a VW badge. In the United States, anyway, and I'm not sure if it's the same as Canada, there is still the image that they were the Beetle and they were the cheap and reliable car. So it's hard to get people to pay a premium for that. They're still working really hard. The new Jetta looks very good, but I don't see it changing the landscape for them because it's a compact car, and it's hard to sell compact cars these days. Two other very interesting things from the Germans. BMW, the X2, a smaller, rounder version of their SUV. That looks like it should be quite popular. And the 48-volt technology, the hybrid technology that I mentioned Ram is using in its engines. Mercedes has got 3 new high-performance vehicles from their AMG tuning brand, all of which use the exact same technology. So I think that speaks to just how omnipresent that technology will be, that it's showing up in a new pickup and also in a new $120,000 Mercedes convertible.
And it's interesting, and you can share your perspective on this too, being part of the media here, there's thousands of us from across the globe, and even when you're back in the media center, you hear German and Italian, and so this may be in Detroit and it may be the North American Auto Show, but this is still a platform for global
absolutely
brands.
Absolutely. I mean, this is worldwide unveilings of vehicles happen here. There's a group of an organization that sort of certifies some auto shows, gives them official international status. You can't call yourself an international show unless they've signed off on you, and if you have the level of media attention, the level of facilities, a few other things to meet to get that, that's when you get the introductions of big, important new vehicles. Like one other example, the Mercedes G-Wagon, which is the square, boxy Jeep that it seems like in Detroit at least, every Russian hockey player has a Mercedes G-Wagon. It's a hand-built in Austria, very small volume, but hugely profitable, hugely popular with high-end customers. That's being introduced here because the world's press is here.
And when we're talking about shows, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas is just the week before Detroit. A lot of auto unveils, a lot of the people here today came straight from Vegas. Is CES taking anything away from the Detroit Auto Show these days, do you think? Or?
That's a fascinating question. The organizers of the Detroit Auto Show are very concerned about that, and in fact the organizers of all auto shows are concerned about losing market share, as it were, to CES. I don't think that there was anything that was introduced at CES last week that would have been done here, so I think that, for at least this year, the two shows seem to have settled into a sort of a peaceful coexistence.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it was almost everyone here was just there, which is what's really interesting.
Including many of the executives, and they had to have two different speeches on two different topics.
All right, we're going to go back to the questions here. And Blake Haley asked, I heard a ripple of news that Windsor could be awarded the new FCA minivan when it's launched later in 2020. We heard from Marchioni yesterday. Did he talk at all when it comes to the future and manufacturing of the Chryslers?
I was not at his roundtable, but from what I remember talking to our Chrysler reporter, he spoke highly of the Windsor plant and said that that remains important to them. There's not a new minivan coming from them at the moment because they just introduced the Pacifica last year.
Which won last year's
absolutely
utility
vehicle of the year award, and which has a really good plug-in hybrid version, as well as the traditional ones. The expectation is that there are some other vehicles based on that same platform, perhaps sort of Ford Flex type SUVs that may come off of it, and that they may go into Windsor.
And can't remember if we actually went over this one already, but any new SUVs from GM?
No, GM, they've got their new family of pickups that they're introducing this year, and the way they generally stagger this is because that's huge sales, huge volume, huge factories, startups, all the rest of it, and the SUVs, which are based on much of the same engineering, are also huge sales, huge profits, huge factory projects to get started. They don't do them in the same year. So we'll have the two new pickups, Chevy and GMC, this year. Then starting next year, probably a rollout. Sorry, I'm just gesturing.
It's not
I'm
you.
not pointing.
No, I was actually just reading a comment that was sent to me from someone saying he wishes he drove a Ferrari or an Audi, and then I realized he's probably seeing the Ferrari and the Audi right behind us.
There are worse fates.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry, were you done with the GM
SUV? I was
SUV
basically done, yes.
Okay.
We will see probably all of their new big SUVs next year.
Okay, question from Gerard Power. Any thoughts about PSA returning to North America?
They have said that they want, a very interesting company. They have said that they want to. But they've said that they want to a number of times. Their current announced plan is to, when they have some autonomous vehicles, to enter a few key markets just with their autonomous vehicles. That, I don't know if they've even announced a window for when they want to do that yet. I would think, not within a couple of years perhaps, but no plans as yet for widespread sales.
Where are they right now? It's Peugeot Citroen?
Peugeot Citroen, yes.
And so what is their market right now then?
Everywhere but the United States and Canada, basically. I mean, they are, I believe they are the third largest manufacturer in Europe. They do a fair amount of business in China, in Latin America, but they have no North American, well, they sell a few cars in Mexico, but no other presence in North America. And it's hard to be a top-tier automaker without having the volume and the profits you get from being present in all the big markets.
I think we're pretty much going to wrap up here, but I figure I'll ask you one more question. When we're just looking ahead to 2018 and the auto industry and sort of the economics of it, what do we expect when it comes to car sales? Is this going to be a good year for the car industry? What is the data telling us at this point?
The expectations at this point are that it will be a good year, but not a great year. We've had we had 5 or 6 record years in a row, then a little bit of a plateau last year. I think the expectation is that sales will be down a couple of percentage points this year, so not enough to be real trouble for anyone, but profits will be a bit lower, sales will be a bit lower. It's going to be a really tough year if you're selling sedans. Basically, SUVs are where the public is, but if you're shopping for a sedan, you should be able to get a great deal.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mark Phelan, for joining me. This is Mark Phelan with the Detroit Free Press. He's been using his encyclopedic brain of knowledge of everything that's out there to answer your questions today about what's new at the Detroit Auto Show and where the car companies are going. Thanks for all your questions, and thanks for joining us.
Did I shut off or something? Or
Just a little hits off. It's because of all the interference.
Okay, good.